If you've been around for a while, then you know how much I care about financial freedom for all. One thing that often gets in the way of that is debt. That's why I'm happy to announce that I've partnered with an amazing organization called Juno. Juno helps you get lower interest rates by using the power of group negotiation. It is a completely free resource that you can use to secure lower interest rates on new and existing student loans. Head to the link in the episode show notes to find out more. This is the Dreamers Podcast, episode 47 with Jessica Myers. Today is December 7th, 2021.
I was looking to own my time. And it's like, here I am at the top of my industry, and it wasn't what I was anticipating. So that's why I went on this long journey of self-discovery, realizing that what if all this time climbing the ladder and the ladder is on the wrong wall? And that's where I really spent this time in self-discovery. And I found real estate. Because at one point at CBS, I wanted to take some time off because I love to travel. And they said that I had used all my time and I had to borrow time from next year. And I was like, wait, borrowing time from next year? That means I don't own my time. And then what if next year I want to travel even more? They're like, okay, well, you have to do something different. And that's when I found out about wholesaling. Because I used to think in order to get in real estate investing, you need to have millions of dollars, as a lot of the most influential people in the world are all in real estate. It's like, okay, cool. I just got to have $1 million. So let me save up. When you start looking at how much you're taking in corporate and working 9 to 5, it's going to take me 50 years to save up to get into real estate. That's when I was introduced to the concept of wholesaling.
Hello, world. Welcome to the Dreamers Podcast. I am Stephanie Anne-Lyse, also known as Anne-Lyse Wealth. I am a financial coach and an author. I self-published my first book, Dream of Legacy, a guide to help dreamers reach financial independence and build generational wealth. In this podcast, I'll have conversations with experts and thought leaders who dare to follow their dreams. You'll hear about their journey and their money stories. I hope it inspires you, dreamers out there, to live life on your own terms.
Come on, dreamers, let's change the world!
This podcast is brought to you by Dream of Legacy. Check out dreamoflegacy.com for resources to assist you on your journey to financial independence. Before we get into today's episode, please take a couple minutes to go into Apple Podcasts, if you're listening from an Apple device, to rate and review the podcast. If you appreciate the free resources that are provided in this podcast, then the best way to let me know is to do just that. Reviews help the podcast be more visible, and it helps other dreamers discover the podcast. So thank you. I appreciate you. And now let's get back to today's episode. Jessica Myers, welcome to the Dreamers Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Such a pleasure. Can you please tell the listeners a little bit about you and what you do?
So my name is Jessica Myers, and my brand is actually called It's Jessica Myers. And the reason I did that, because I spent a lot of time in corporate America working, and, I thought because I worked at Fox and I worked at CBS, being a journalism major from Georgia State, it was everything I ever wanted to work at CBS in New York. And I found myself at 22 years old working at CBS in New York. And I was like, wait, I finally climbed the proverbial ladder on the wall. And yet this experience feels so hollow. Meeting celebrity after celebrity. And even one time I gave me chills, and Nick Cannon opened up the door and he's like, after you, Miss Jessica. It's like, he knows my name. Oh my gosh. But then after that feeling, it was like, now what? He didn't add anything to my bottom line. And I realized, like, wait, here I am popping for the gram, 22, working in my major, in my field, but it was not the fulfillment that I sought and desired when I was in high school to make a difference, to change lives. I was looking to own my time. And it's like, here I am at the top of my industry, and it wasn't what I was anticipating. So that's why I went on this long journey of self-discovery, realizing that what if all this time climbing the ladder and the ladder is on the wrong wall? And that's where I really spent this time in self-discovery. And I found real estate. Because at one point at CBS, I wanted to take some time off because I love to travel. And they said that I had used all my time and I had to borrow time from next year. And I was like, wait, borrowing time from next year? That means I don't own my time. And then what if next year I want to travel even more? They're like, okay, well, you have to do something different. And that's when I found out about wholesaling. Because I used to think in order to get in real estate investing, you need to have millions of dollars, as a lot of the most influential people in the world are all in real estate. It's like, okay, cool. I just got to have $1 million. So let me save up. When you start looking at how much you're taking in corporate and working 9 to 5, it's going to take me 50 years to save up to get into real estate. That's when I was introduced to the concept of wholesaling. Wholesaling allows you, it's a low risk way of getting involved in real estate. You can learn the game from other professional investors and you can help them find deals. And by helping them find deals, you get rewarded in between. And that's where I learned about a way you can get involved in no credit, typically no money down, but sometimes it may cost you some funds to get involved, just as with anything. The gas to get there counts as money down. So I was able to minimize my expenses to get into the game, and I learned a lot. Wholesaling is about finding a deal and understanding what to do with the deal to transition it into money. And ultimately learning what investors do to generate income from real estate deals. That is how I got into the game. And then I was like, wait, okay, if they're doing it, let me start flipping. And then as I do with anything, I always set out a goal. Like, what is the end? I start with the end in mind. So the start was to get involved in real estate to free my time. But then the goal then became 1,000 doors. Okay, I will transact 1,000 doors. And meeting with Yvonne at the time, who's in the hospitality space, she's like, you can do that one by one in the single family, or you can grow leaps to do that in the commercial side of things. So that's where we started working on commercial space. She was on a mission to create 221 hotel owners, and I was on a mission to acquire 1,000 doors. So with our powers combined, we were able to purchase the Hilton in El Reno, Oklahoma, the Home 2 Suites. And literally the rest has been history. I still have development projects going on here in Atlanta, as well as the investment properties that we have in El Reno, and working on even more. So my goal is to keep acquiring doors until I get 1,000. And what you're experiencing is my journey to get there and help others along the way.
I love it. How many doors do you have now?
We're almost just over 300. Yeah, so I still have a very long way to go. But yeah, we're a good portion of the way there. And partner was right. You get there a lot faster by looking at multifamily or not just doing it one by one. Because even the properties down in Brunswick, we got that 6 at a time. And we're looking to do 8 more lots down there as well. Anyway, no deal is too small. And definitely we partner with who we don't if the deal is perceivably too big.
It's very interesting. You said so much in just your intro just now, talking about having a goal for your life and then reaching that goal and realizing that, that's not really it. I had the same experience. I went to college and I wanted to be a CPA. I went and worked with a top firm and I was like, no. And it's interesting because it led me to writing. So now I'm a journalist. So
we kind of swap.
I know, right? Great. So you talked about wholesaling. So tell me a little more about how you got started, what kind of investment it required. And for any of our listeners who might be interested in doing that, what are some of the steps that you advise that they take?
For one, set a goal. I used to love road tripping and we would always hop in the car all the time. I'm a sorority girl and I love going on the road, but you hop in a car, where are you going? Where are you heading? I think that's the thing that most people, they're just like, I got to get out of corporate, and they just start doing stuff without understanding where they're heading. Obviously, you took the job to have some sort of lifestyle, a quality of life. So how much does it take to maintain that quality of life? For me, it was generating $83,000 a month, which is what it takes to be a millionaire. I'm generating $83,000 a month. But honestly, financial freedom may come in. I found along the way of working to generate $83,000. Now, honestly, $10,000 a month will put me in economic freedom. But I at least set the goal. It's almost like setting to go to Niagara Falls, which is just like, no, you know what? It's actually really beautiful here in Richmond, Virginia. So I'm going to stay here. But at least I now have a direction of where I'm headed to. And even if the journey pivots or looks different along the way, I now have set a goal to go towards. And so that was the point of setting my goal at 1,000 doors and generating $83,000 a month. Because now along the way, we're all learning together. We're all growing together. And you're finding elements that like, wait, okay. So when you pass by a house all the time, I used to see a sign that says, we buy ugly houses. I was like, who wants an ugly house? When I find a house, and when people talk about their dream house, no one ever talks about an ugly house. Who wants this ugly house? But then how many ugly houses do you see in a community? Like, somebody needs to do something about that. Well, as a wholesaler, you can be the person to do something about that. You can contact the owner of the home or the property and work out a negotiation like, hey, I noticed that the property was dilapidated. I noticed that no one lives here. I noticed there's obvious issues going on with the home. What can we do to try to help? and working to help them, there are investors that like myself now who I may not have the time to go look for a deal. I want to do another flip, right? But what time do I have to drive around, look for a property, contact the owner, negotiate the price? I just want to come, look at the numbers, and keep it moving. And so that's where a wholesaler is able to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So they're able to talk to the owner of the property. They're able to negotiate. What price are you willing to sell your house for? What are the issues going on with the home? So once they get all of that data lined up, they will then take it to an investor that's actively looking for deals and saying, hey, you said you were looking for a house, or you wanted to get an investment that was going to be $100,000. Well, there's a house over here in this neighborhood, in this community, that you can get for $100,000. You can even make $40,000 or $50,000 from it. And so they're like, cool. Well, I trust that you did your numbers right. Just in case, I'm going to go back and do my numbers. And if that works, I will then become the buyer of the home. So as the wholesaler, you get paid for essentially setting that up. And you do all of that set up through an attorney. An attorney is what protects you and makes sure that everyone gets paid. They connect with the seller to get the contract from the seller. And what the attorney will do is run title. And they're like, cool, we'll run title on the property, make sure that the seller can actually sell it. What are the liens are against the property, and transfer that title now to the end buyer or the investor that is willing to put up the capital. As the wholesaler, I didn't have to use my credit. I'm not applying for a mortgage. I'm not purchasing it. I am simply getting paid for connecting this investor with this great opportunity to the seller that needs to sell their home. And I get paid in between.
And so, like, on average, how much were you getting per deal?
So actually, my first wholesale deal, I wound up getting about $13,000 for transacting that deal. But the average wholesale deal ranges anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, depending upon the spread that you're able to get. Now, at the time, for me, that was life-changing. That was, like I said, on the route to getting millions, I realized just how impactful $13,000 can be.
Absolutely.
And how much it can free your time. I'm thinking, if I'm willing to give my job this much time for X amount of dollars, but in 2 weeks worth of effort and 3 weeks worth of effort, I'm able to do the same thing and save myself months and months of putting in work at my job, which takes 60 plus hours a week. So it's like, let me start putting my efforts here. And that's really what started me drifting from, let me make a plan. If I'm able to 2 to 3 weeks to generate this type of capital, what would happen if I put even more hours in there? And that's how I was able to, back out. Ultimately, there was a lot of support, a lot of education and things like that was needed as well. That's why I teach the course how to get into wholesaling, from wholesale owner to hotel owner, but understanding these basic principles of finding an undervalued asset and now selling it for higher than what it's worth. And that's ultimately what you're able to do as a wholesaler. You're able, because with their problems, if they were to list the property on the market, they would not get their full asking. You would not get full retail, because you need to fix the electrical. You need to fix the plumbing. You need to fix all these things. So that's why you have to sell it to an investor or someone that is going to put the money into the project, so that now it can be sold for its true value. So as a wholesaler, these are some of the things you get to know and understand about the industry before you actually go and risk your own funds.
So as a newbie, like someone who's interested in getting into wholesaling, how do they go about finding investors?
Really, it's so crazy. That was the thing I was wondering too. I was trying to raise money for a charity, and I was trying to raise $500, and I can raise it. I think I may have gotten maybe 100. So getting involved in real estate, I was like, if my friends can't even come up with $500, who's going to buy a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 property? But you'd be surprised when you pull out investments. People start coming out the woodwork. People I didn't even expect. Wait, you couldn't even give $10 to this donation, but you got $30,000 to purchase this house. And really took me to start going to networking events, to start meeting investors, as well as honestly being open on my social media platforms, having those conversations just about my journey. And then people will hit me up and was like, hey, I saw that deal you posted. You have any more, anything else like it? Or keep me posted if you find anything else. And I'm like, well, what are you looking for? And they're like, oh, well, I'm looking for a duplex, or I'm looking for a triplex, or I'm looking for whatever. So as people really start to put in what they're looking for, because people have money. And the problem with people with money is that they need to put it in an engine that's going to continue to grow. Because in your account, the bank is using your money to grow if it's just sitting in your account. So people with cash are looking for engines to put it into. It doesn't have to be an experienced investor that buys millions of dollars. The Blow Joe down the street just wants to make $20,000 this year, but they work in their 9 to 5 and they don't have time to go look for a property. So you get their criteria, you get their qualifications. What are you looking for? What neighborhood communities are you honing into? What's your price point that you can easily move to? And what's your appetite for fixing it up? There are some investors that only deal in lipstick projects. They only want something, they got a little paint, change the carpet, and that's it. But you have other investors, when I mentioned I transitioned into the development side, I love a good tear down and build it back up. And that's the thing too, understanding land. Land with a structure on it is way more valuable than land with no structure. So understanding that part, like even as a developer, I still want to find a property with a structure on it or with the house on it because it adds more value than just cleared out land with no home or no structure on it. Building my criteria, understanding what I'm looking for and building that from the buyers, having the buyers tell you their criteria and go find what they're looking for, which will help you sell a lot faster than if you find what you're looking for and you're like, nobody's buying my stuff. Well, you found what you were looking for. Go look for what your buyers want. And that definitely comes from networking. That comes from utilizing whatever you have access to, your community, your network. This is not the industry to get into and be silent and shy. You really want to get out, start talking, having those conversations with community leaders because they want to help clean up their community too. So that conversation has helped me to find projects as well. Really just about networking, having those conversations, starting literally with the end in mind from your buyers, your investors, and everywhere in between.
So you went from wholesaling to commercial real estate. Did you do residential at all?
Yes. So once I did wholesaling, that's when I started doing renovations of single family homes. And then ultimately the renovation of single family homes led to development of single family homes. And through the development process, that's when I got into the commercial space.
You mentioned that right now, one of your focuses was short-term rentals, which is commonly referred to as Airbnb. Can you talk to us about that? How did you get into the space?
My journey into becoming a short-term rental landlord actually happened by accident. I often look at what happened with Blockbuster and Netflix. Because Blockbuster had the opportunity to not only become Netflix, but purchase Netflix. And they opted not to. They were like, no, we're so good. Who's going to want to do it that way? And that is the same thing that happened with me. We were flipping from renovating projects. They are so good. They're beautiful. Who doesn't want to buy it? Right? Until nobody bought it. What we did not know is even prior to COVID and the pandemic, there was a looming recession that was getting ready to happen. So whereas I jumped into that particular market, I jumped in at the top end of that market and it was about to bubble. So no one purchased our project. We tried to reduce the rate as low as we could without taking a loss. Unfortunately, we could not sell. We did get under contract with somebody, but then they fell through and, just things started to happen. So it was like, what can we do? We are at a precipice where we see something's about to go on. It's like, how can I think back to the Blockbuster Netflix? Netflix pivoted where Blockbuster would. That's how they were able to succeed. So that's where I was like, we have this beautiful home. It's staged so that we can sell it. How about we just put it on a short-term rental platform, which is more commonly known as Airbnb or Vrbo or any of those other platforms that allow you to leverage your ownership in an asset and let someone stay there for the night. And that's how we were like, okay, well, let's just open it up and see what happens. We were booked out for months very quickly. And it was like, wow, this property didn't sell the market, but it's really turning up in the rental space. So then it was like, well, we have another property around the corner and we're making so much through the Airbnb that how about we just turn that one into an Airbnb rental as well? And same thing, like it started getting booked up. We had 3 person who came and stayed for 3 months. In the first few months of starting that platform, it was like, wait, like, okay, so we may be onto something. Like, we're just trying to sell all of our projects. Let's say you make 20, 30,000 for a flip, but through our Airbnbs, you can sometimes net up to 60,000 per year. So imagine one flip, you make 20 or 30,000, you're on to the next one versus having Airbnb that you can net about 60,000 in a year per property.
That sounds like a good deal.
How about we start doing that? And so that's where it was like, okay, well, let me just expand. As the wholesaler, I know how to find projects that are significantly undervalued. I know how to negotiate. Then we can fix it up because that's what I've been doing through renovation. And then now we can put it on Airbnb to generate profits. And that's what we've been able to do. And I seen that. It was like, cool, how can we do this in other markets? So my husband being from Brunswick, Georgia, we were able to go down there. And that's how we acquired 6 properties down there. Okay, if one property was able to net this much, then if we get in, we're able to generate even more income from times 6. Quaint 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom rented out could easily run between $2,000 and $4,000 a month per unit, just depending upon how you have it set up, your pricing, and other things that you have in the mix. So just continuing this cycle and like, how can we continue to add to our portfolio? So I still do new developments. We still handle renovations, but really doing the short-term rental space has really helped. And that's where I realized like, okay, look at the short-term, mid-term, and long-term vision of getting to, remember my goal is generating the $83,000 a month. So if long-term, I'm able to do that through my cash flow projects. Short-term, I'm able to add spikes through our development projects as they sell. And then for the mid-term, we're able to do that through our renovations and our flips and things like that. And then through the short term, that's where I have the education, the classes, the other ways that I support other investors of how to make this a reality in their life. And that's how we've been able to do what we do.
So can you talk a little bit about some of the mistakes that most people getting into the short rental space or mistakes to avoid? Because I've heard of people getting in trouble. For instance, I know some states allow you to do Airbnb without owning the property. Some jurisdictions allow that, but you can't do that everywhere. I'm curious to hear like maybe some of the mistakes that you've seen people make.
I know that a lot of people have tried to do rental arbitrage, which is the concept, like you said, where you'll rent it from someone. Now, the mistake that is not having the communication where you think that, oh, let me do it and get away with it. And I get it. A lot of times it's ask for forgiveness and not permission. So yes, it can be something where you get involved in over your head and the law comes and slaps you and is like, nope, you weren't supposed to do it, or you weren't supposed to do it like that. So you definitely want to make sure that you are following the laws within your jurisdiction. So whatever county or property, honestly, that's why it took me some time to leave the Atlanta market, because I wanted to make sure that if I wasn't familiar, I was working with someone local that is familiar with the local laws and procedures, so that I'm not just doing something and assuming it's going to be right everywhere. I want to make sure that I'm in compliance with my local jurisdiction, because some people may be okay with it. Some community municipalities may be okay with it, and some may not. And they may have things where the citizens try to keep that out of their community. So that's what you want to be careful when getting into a house that's in a subdivision that has an HOA that doesn't allow it. Then that's your plan and you never researched it. And now you're in it and you're like, oh my gosh, because you can't take a house back. You can't just return the sender. So if you are purchasing out of state or out of market, make sure that you are tapping in with someone that is local and that knows the laws, that can help you out of what's possible and what may not be possible. I have seen that as a mistake that people make, because I have had someone where they tried to swing it. Their guest got lost on the premises trying to find the gym. And they were like, yeah, I'm in this Airbnb and da, da, da. And they're like, Airbnb? Where? And they already were in a lease for, the space. And now they're getting a warning where if we catch this again, you're out. Well, she didn't buy the place because she needs someone to live. She bought the place for Airbnb, but she didn't know that it was going to be an issue. And that was something where, how do you get out of a lease? That was your plan. So you want to make sure you know the end in mind before you get involved. Also, too, insurance-wise, make sure your insurance company and whatever protections that you have are understanding what you're doing. Because the last thing you want is to be like, cool, I'm good, I got insurance. And then you put a claim and the police report got everybody there but you. And you're turning in your claim and we're protecting everybody but you. Where were you in the midst? So those are things that you want to do to make sure that you're protected as far as what could go wrong. I know a lot of people are concerned about area, but honestly, that was one of the things I was nervous about, because obviously this house that I flipped, it was more of a suburban area. It wasn't in the city. And honestly, it did well. I was thinking people are going to want to come party and they're going to hang out. There's nowhere to drive. But I actually captured an audience where people were like, look, we're here for work. We're not here to be at the top of the bar and go downstairs and drink. We're going to be working all day, and we can come home. We want it quiet. We want a yard because we have a dog. We actually like being away from the city. I wouldn't say go into the middle of nowhere with your Airbnb, but definitely don't be afraid that if you're not in the city, it won't do well. Because just as much as you have people that travel for pleasure, you have a lot more people that travel for work. and they don't necessarily want to be with the bars and all of that stuff. So don't let that intimidate you that you're not right up in the mix of everything.
Let's talk about your goal of $83,000 a month. When did you set that goal for yourself?
I set that goal back in 2017, 2018.
So your goal of $83,000 a month. I'm always curious to learn about my guests' money story. Can you talk to me about an early money memory and how it impacted your views about money?
I can just remember in elementary school, I used to sell candy. My school was always doing fundraisers, and just my competitive edge, I was always selling something. A lot of people, because all the kids at the church were selling candy, a lot of people were like, well, we're not buying from anybody, because if we buy from you, we got to buy from everybody else. And I remember telling them, ain't nobody got to know what we doing. Like, I got discretion. Come on, let's go. And so everybody used to buy from me. And the only person who would win would be the person who was supported by their parents. So like that competitive edge, it was like, they got money and they didn't have to do any work. And it's like, I'm up here working, and then, now they beat me because I'm working door to door, and then their parents just asking, hey, yeah, how much out? You got $10 to give. And meanwhile, $10 is 10 sales that I made, right? So it's just like, wait, I feel like looking at that made me want to get smarter, not harder. So by the time I got to middle school, we were looking to take some trips. And I remember it was like $300 to go to DC and a little bit of money for spending money. And my mom was like, I don't have that. So I was like, wait, if I was able to sell candy, maybe I can sell candy and hustle my way into $300. And that's what I did. So it was like, okay, so if she doesn't have it, it doesn't mean no, I don't get to go. It just means I have to find another way. That's where I got the concept of what can I create? What can I do to get my goal? Not as a child, I'm not thinking of generating thousands of dollars. I'm just thinking, I got a trip. The trip is $400. That means I need to sell 400 candy bars. That's what it means to me. So it continued to grow into, cool. If I want to buy a car is X amount of dollars. This is a way that I can generate income. That's how I think. Like somebody asked me the other day, like, how much money do I make a year? And I was like, I haven't, until tax time, unless you're my CPA or accountant, I don't think about my salary in an annual basis. I literally think project based, and that's been from a child of, cool, I need to go on this trip. I need to raise this money. Okay. So that's where I set myself like, okay, where is the ultimate goal? What do we want to do? And just thinking about for years and years and years as a child, you're just like, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire. And it wasn't until I actually got an adult and it was like, well, what does that mean? Because I figured I would do something dope at some point to generate $1 million. Like that, I just knew that. But I never really knew or understood what I would do, where that would come from, and how that works. And so I genuinely put down $1 million divided by 12. And then I saw like, oh, a millionaire needs to generate at least $83,000 a month. So cool, you divide that by 4. This is how much I need to do per week. Okay. So how do I now fuse real estate or what I can get access to? And when they say the 7 streams of income, how can I fill in those gaps to get me closer to that goal? And what you guys have seen since 2015 or when I started has been my aspiration working towards that goal.
That's very interesting, right? Because most people don't think that they can be millionaires. But I think when you actually take the time to do what you did and break it down and turning into like actionable items, you will probably realize that the goal is not as unattainable as you think.
Especially too, when you compare what you're selling, because I used to sell keychains in middle school. In middle school, I used to sell keychains and I was selling them for $1. And see, in middle school, my bills aren't that high and I'm not trying to get $83,000 a month. So I'm fine, right? But let's say I continue down the trajectory, unless I found a way to scale the labor, scale what I was doing, it would be really, really a lot of work and hard to get to $83,000 a month, just me sitting, knitting and sewing those keychains one by one. If my industry or business doesn't scale from that, I need to think of a higher ticketed item. How about I start teaching someone how to make the keychains, right? Because let's say the keychains net me $10,000 a year. But if I can teach someone how to make $10,000 a year, how much will they willing to pay me? And if I'm able to charge $1,000 just to teach you how to make 10,000, would you pay me? Oh, yes, you would. Okay, well, how many other people can I teach? So now that created a new business segment, which will get me that much closer to the $83,000 a month than me. You want to think about time to value of what you're doing. Because if it takes me 2 hours to generate one keychain and it's just me and I charge $1, then how can I scale to those leaps? Or if I can look at a different approach of what I'm doing, if I can teach other people how to do it and set them up with kits of how to get started. And I start making yarn so that you can make it too. And so now I'm coming and I'm integrating other businesses or other ways around that same concept so that I can be smarter about my business. That's how it goes from being a wholesaler to a renovator and flipper, and then now to a developer and hotelier. I found different ways within the segment of real estate to continue to compound and get me that much closer to my goal and make it more attainable. Through wholesaling, yes, you can generate between $5,000 and $10,000 per wholesale deal, right? But then how many wholesale deals can you do in a month? How long does it take to get one deal? Is that, and as great as that is, and as much as for me, it covered the expenses of my job for a while, right? But is that getting me to my goal of $83,000 a month? Unless I'm scaling it, unless there has to be something that's going to be realistic. I think that was the biggest aha moment, because you just get so siloed in what you're doing and like, cool, I'm going to be a millionaire. I work really hard, but your keychains are just $1. And unless you are able to come up with more time, you're able to work harder. But then, you're not doing this so that you can just all be working the whole time. So you want to think about ways to be smarter at whatever it is you do. A lot of people say, well, entrepreneurship isn't my thing. It's not for me. Not saying that you have to, but you want to have ownership around somewhere what you're doing. If you're a doctor, you work at a hospital, you're making amazing money, but have some sort of ownership, even if it's in owning the publications for the papers that you write for the hospital and medical authority that you work with. So now owning a publication, you can publish other doctors in the same field. So it's cool that I'm a great surgeon and I do what I do, but what medical papers are you working on? And how can I become a publisher in that industry to now have ownership and make money even beyond what I do? So I'm not saying that everybody has to do real estate. What I am saying, though, is understanding the concepts of wholesaling, of buying something less than its actual value. And then how can I have ownership in that state of transacting whatever that is? And for me, it's been real estate and it's been flourishing and it's helping me get exponentially closer to hitting my goals.
That's amazing. You shared earlier that you also are in the development space. Can you tell me what you do there?
Development is so key. It's looking at the long term. It's looking at the huge vision and where does your part play? Because, as a wholesaler, you're coming in and you're just like, I'm just trying to get the money, find the owner and connect it with the buyer. And as a flipper or renovator, sometimes you're just in it to get the money. But as a developer, you're looking now not only at the house, but looking at the school, looking at the jobs that you're providing, the people that you're employing, the work that you're able to do with county officials and municipalities that is looking to change their community. Like when these politicians run for local community offices, they're given the vision of what they want the city to look like. And people are voting based on them accomplishing that. And so they're not developers. Yes, I have this vision, but they need to partner with people that get the vision and can actually do the groundwork. And that's what we've been able to do as a case study with Brunswick, Georgia. I partner with the local municipality. I understand the 5, the 10, the 20-year trajectory. We spend a lot of time understanding what that looks like. And now we can come in with our homes that we're able to renovate. For example, the 6 properties that we have in Brunswick. Yes, it's just 6 properties. What's 6 properties when you have a 85-unit hotel? But these 6 properties are very pivotal as you enter the historic district of Brunswick. That's where these projects are going to be. And for the longest time, it was such an eyesore in the community of a historic neighborhood. They needed someone to come in and revitalize it and breathe new life. And not only have we been able to do that, to come back and breathe new life into these projects, but the people that we've been able to employ along the way, the community feels very much a part of the projects that we're doing. They wear it like a badge of like, oh yes, those projects, I know, I walk through them. Mm-hmm. And it's really a community project that we've been able to do. And that's the difference of being a developer versus someone who's just coming in to get your money and leaving. But the developer understanding the true economic impact of the work that you're doing and thinking about all levels of what we're doing and not just get in and get out, but working with community leaders to change the community.
So you just referenced that you were the owner of a 85-unit hotel, and you and your partner recently made history.
Yes.
As the youngest Black woman to co-own a hotel under a major chain. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
When they say your net worth is your network, that is truly the thing. I remember going to quit my job and telling my family, and they're like, why would you do that? What are you doing? Versus I said it in community of other investors. And they were like, yeah, she did it. Woo! But doing that, a part of it is hard. A part of it, you're going to come across those roadblocks. My partner and I, that we went to college together, now, you're having lunch and you're talking to someone that's like, cool, well, what's your dream? What's your vision? What's your goal? And mine is 1,000 doors. What's your dream? What's your vision? What's your goal? And she's like, well, I want to create 221 hotel owners. So it's like, okay, well, where does the synergy lie to merge our visions together? And that's ultimately what you see and how we were able to make history. But we had to kiss a lot of frogs to get there. Was not an easy journey. There was times where we're like, hey, let's go buy a hotel. And you tell somebody else that and they're like, why would I do that? That's very risky. Like, no, it took the right mindset to keep going in the midst of adversity and everything telling us no. Onset of our journey, we actually had a couple events where no one showed up except the panelists. We had to keep going. We had to make sure that our mindset was in the right place so that we can get to the point where we achieved and ultimately kept being in these rooms where we're like, no one else in here looks like me. Why are we the only women? Why are we the only Black women? Why are we the only Black people? You go into these rooms and you're sitting at the table and then you realize like, wait, we are actually ruffling some feathers. We're interrupting the industry by coming in like this. Just kept on a vision. We kept on a goal that we are going to do this. We're going to achieve. We have to up our ante to get involved into this thing that people are telling us is impossible. And we found a way that through networking, through collaboration, through partnerships, that we were able to make it possible.
So you said a keyword just there, mindset. Did you always have this mindset of, I'm going to be a millionaire? Or is there some point in time where your mindset changed?
I will say in high school, I tapped into, I started out in media. So I just thought I was going to be Oprah, and Oprah's a billionaire. And if Oprah's a billionaire, I know I'm going to be pretty dope and I'm going to be in media. And so that's going to be my reality. And that's just what I knew until like in my 20s. I'm like, wait, I'm not doing anything to get me any closer to $1 million on my salary. So I had to do something different. And honestly, it took having those honest conversations. My brother actually sat me down and was like, cool, you want to go quit your job? How much are you bringing in? How much are you putting out? And I was like, to look at that. I don't know how, but bills were getting paid and things were happening, but I was not cognizant. I was not aware to be intentional about my financial prowess. So really taking that look, and especially being married, we're going to have those intense conversations about finances. And it's understanding, like, how can you be aware of what you're doing and aware of what works well in your financial strategy, what does not work, and what can you do differently to move forward?
Actually, I saw an article this year where it says that you were planning to venture into investing in Africa.
Yeah, so actually, I'd gone over there for a girls' trip in Zanzibar just to have fun and relax. And my cousin, she actually started a organization, and we actually launched it in Africa. And we adapted a village, and we've just been blessing them ever since. So the first day on our trip, we were able to take a couple $100s worth of groceries and feed the entire village. And I'm talking about people coming out from everywhere. One of the ladies I was with us started passing out money. And so, you got cash, you got grocery, bless the family very significantly. So what we did was, one of the houses we went in, they had a hole in the roof. Another one didn't have a floor. So we started getting the needs of the community. And so this is what I mean by tapping into the development side of everything. When you're looking at beyond just a home, but you're looking at the ethos of the community. When we start taking in their needs. So we literally spent weeks raising capital, raising donations to help advance this community. And something that small is considered development. So it's not that I'm over there building this 800-room hotel, but we're over there patching up roofs, building floors, providing mattresses, feeding a whole community. That's how our development has started, working just with what you can. Because what we throw away in a Subway sandwich could change their entire week of how they're able to now progress and move forward. So it's been amazing working with the community in Zanzibar that we're helping to redevelop and provide food, provide resources. The next thing we'll be working on is providing a clean water well for the community to have a draw. It was beautiful to see, we sent some funds over there to feed them a couple weeks ago. And you talk about hundreds and hundreds of people within that village were fed. And that's the work that we've been able to do with favorfriday.org. So, I mean, it's amazing. My cousin Candace McGee, she actually has a huge passion and a heart for the people. And with what we've been able to do in development, really just been able to change the scape of that community in that village.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Jessica, I always end the interview with a round of rapid fire questions. Can you tell me about a book that changed your perspective on life?
The Alchemist.
What's one thing about money you wish you could tell your younger self?
It is currency and it is meant to stay in flow.
What's the best investment in yourself you've made so far?
The investment in my health and making sure that I'm on the right track. Without my health, without my body, I could not do what I do.
Filling the blank in 3 words or less. Money to me is?
The power to accomplish my dreams.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Creating memorable, magical moments.
Well, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Can you tell the listeners where to find you?
Find me on Instagram and all major platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that, at It's Jessica Myers. And you can also go to my website to contact me, apply to work with me, either do it yourself, do it with you, or do it for you at itsjessicamyers.com. Also, our development masterclass, where we teach you literally how to go the ground up in investment and development. Hit us up at developmentmasterclass.com.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Dreamers Podcast. You can find the episode show notes and all of the links mentioned at dreamoflegacy.com. If you liked today's episode, here's what you can do to support me and help more dreamers discover the podcast. Follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Rate and review the podcast to help the podcast gain more visibility. Share the podcast with your family, friends, and coworkers. And if you really enjoyed today's episode, please take a second to tag me at thedreamers.podcast on Instagram and let me know what you liked about today's episode. All right, dreamers, that's it for today. I will see you back here next week for another episode of the Dreamers Podcast.
Okay, dreamers, time to build this legacy.
This podcast is for general information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax, legal, financial planning, insurance, accounting, investment, or any other kind of professional advice or services. Please consult with an appropriate tax, financial, or legal professional to receive appropriate advice based on your situation.
Sunday, Skincare Day, is one of the ways I keep my sanity in these crazy times. DREAMER'S is an all-natural, Black-owned skincare brand carefully handcrafted by parents who could not find the proper care solutions to address their family skin problems. All DREAMER'S products are made of organic and high-quality ingredients, meticulously chosen to give your skin the smooth results and the glow it deserves.